Orach Chaim, which means Congregation Path of Life, is part of the early story of New Amsterdam. The first Jewish settlers arrived with the Dutch. By 1859, there were 40,000 citizens of Jewish ethnicity. On December 11, 1879, at 11:15 a.m., Marcus J. Cohen and Sigmund Arnstein registered the name Orach Chaim in the office of the registrar of the county of the city of New York. In 1879, an article appeared in the Jewish Messenger stating that a group of individuals, mostly young men and like-minded individuals, had broken away from Congregation Adas Israel, located at 328 East 57th Street, to form a place of communal worship at a rented spacious hall at 203 East 54th Street, a Beit Knesset, literally a house of assembly on strict Orthodox principles, with Mr. Nussbaum as president, J. Rosenberg as vice president, A. Rosenberg and S. Dannenberg, trustees only, men of spotless and unimpeachable religious character, would be permitted to officiate. Only observant Israelites are permitted as members. Special attention will be paid to the training of children and familiarizing them with the prayers. Almost 10 years later, the synagogue is now at 203 East 59th Street. We are advised in the Jewish Messenger that this synagogue had achieved its objective: daily study and practice of the law, with Mr. Hertzberg giving religious and popular classes. In 1887, an article in Jews and Judaism states, "We hear that even uptown there is an Orthodox synagogue, Congregation Orach Chaim, whose members are completely German and enormously wealthy, who gather daily for prayer and study." In 1888, we are told that Messrs. I. Frankel and E. Arenstein addressed the congregation to raise funds for the support of a chief rabbi of New York, and Mr. Hertzberg was appointed delegate of the congregation. In 1898-1900, the congregation purchased a building on East 51st Street with a $5,000 down payment contributed by Mr. Mayor Dannenberg in honor of his son Isaac, who was president of the Brewers Exchange. It had a $5,000 mortgage. The synagogue was dedicated March 17, 1899, and the dedication address was delivered by Reverend Dr. H.P. Mendes, minister of Congregation Shareth Israel, and one of the founders of JTS, where he was professor of history and professor of homiletics at YU. After a sale from Annie Berger to Rachel and Hesse Schweitzer, the property was sold to Congregation Orach Chaim at our present site. Samuel Alexander Schonbrunn emigrated from Hungary in 1890. He started as a coffee salesman and subsequently opened a small coffee company, eventually developed Savarin Coffee. Named after author Brillat Savarin, a noted French cookbook author, the coffee became known as the coffee served at the Waldorf Astoria. Eventually, the Schonbrunn house became a rabbi's domicile on East 95th Street. In his will, he stipulated that upon his death, the company should be sold, with the results split between Hebrew University and United Jewish Appeal. It was purchased by Tetley Tea, which still owns it. In addition, Mr. Schonbrunn was very generous and donated his home on East 95th Street to Congregation Orach Chaim. That residence of his is now actually the rabbi's residence.
Orach Chaim was fortunate to have had many great rabbis serve our community. The Reverend Joseph Meir Asher served for just 2 years, dying in 1909 at the age of 37. The New York Times obituary stated that he had a weakened heart due to overwork, as he delivered 16 sermons and lectures a week as both rabbi of Congregation Orach Chaim and as a professor of Bible and homiletics at the Jewish Theological Seminary. He was a brilliant Talmudic scholar who was also especially noted for his English education, having graduated from Cambridge University. Rabbi Hertz was the first graduate of the Jewish Theological Seminary. 2 years after becoming rabbi of Congregation Orach Chaim, Rabbi Hertz became the chief rabbi of Great Britain due to the death of Rabbi Marcus Adler. In 1913, the Reverend Moses Hyamson was unanimously voted to become rabbi for life, and the dues were immediately doubled. The New York Times tells us he was the second highest paid rabbi in the world at $5,000 per annum, and we are further told that the congregation was charmed by his preaching. Rabbi Hyamson was a stern opponent of calendar reform, which would have had Shabbat as a floating day and would have created a wandering Shabbat. He was the founder of the League for Safeguarding the Fixity of the Shabbat Against Possible Encroachment by Calendar Reform, and was purported to have visited the White House in 1922-23 to make his case on the topic. Rabbi Hyamson also wrote an important book on Jewish methods of slaughtering animals from the point of view on humanity. In 1922, he spoke to the American Humane Association Society, which was garnishing strong support against kosher slaughtering on the grounds of cruelty. In 1925, he translated Duties of the Heart, Chovat HaVovath, into English, and we are told that his was the first translation of this important treatise. It was at this time, under Rabbi Hyamson's leadership, that Orach Chaim evolved into a center of the Jewish religious community in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, a place of prayer, study, and education. In the early 1920s, it had over 450 children in its Hebrew school, a center of social and charitable work, as well as a community social center. During the Depression, negotiations were held with KJ on the possibility of amalgamating the two synagogues, although a merger never occurred.
When I was a little girl, my parents of blessed memory, Lizlot and Boris Gona, would take me very often on a Shabbos afternoon to visit Rabbi Hyamson in his home. I remember a dark apartment. I remember Rabbi Hyamson sitting in a corner of his library, and he would say, "Come closer, my dear," and my parents pushing me to say something to the rabbi. It was dark, and all I saw was a long white beard. I came away from that experience thinking, for sure I had seen God, and God had a British accent.
Rabbi Hyamson died June 9, 1949, and was rabbi for 28 years. The records show that Rabbi Simon Langer, the assistant rabbi at the time, officiated at his funeral. Rabbi Jeremiah Berman of the Rabbinical Assembly of America's memorial service for Rabbi Hyamson said that his was the excellency presumed in the proverbial scholar who would not merit anything imperfect to leave his hand. He was tolerant and respectful to those who would not or could not share his theological convictions. He had no children, but claimed that the 300 rabbis he had taught were his children. At the end of his life, he said, "Some of my pupils will remain Orthodox, some will turn Reform, some will forget everything I taught them. I hope and pray that whatever they do it L'Shem Shamayim." During the tenure of Rabbi Hyamson, despite the economic depression and financial woes, Orach Chaim persevered due to the able leadership of Mr. Julia Dukas, who was president from 1926 to 1940, and the extraordinary devotion of its membership, drawn from some of the most illustrious and outstanding families in New York, including Adler, Hertz, Hyman, Lamport, Levine, Margaretten, Schwarzschild, and Wexler. Upon his death, a beautiful letter was written to Orach Chaim by then Governor of New York, Herbert Lehman, who was a good friend to Mr. Dukas, as well as a lovely letter from the mayor, Fiorello LaGuardia. Mr. Julius Dukas was a founder of what is now the Hebrew Free Loan Society, and he made no distinction of a borrower, Jew or Gentile, white or a person of color, and never a penny of interest. It continues to exist and has given over $260 million to 875,000 borrowers.
Mention must be made of Mr. A.D. Cohen, who served as vice president for 37 years until 1968, and Mr. Emil Offenbacher as treasurer from 1936 to 1959. The minutes indicate that in the most difficult of times, they were thoroughly devoted to Orach Chaim. During World War II, over 115 members of Orach Chaim served in the armed forces, and a number of immigrants were settled in the community. Following the death of Rabbi Heimson, Rabbi Langer took over as Rabbi of Orach Chaim. Rabbi Langer was ordained at the Hildesheimer Rabbinical Academy in Berlin and at the École Rabbinique in Paris. Rabbi Langer was active in helping Jews who had fled to Paris from Russia after the Russian Revolution. With the rise of Hitler, Rabbi Langer was active in assisting the exodus of Jews from Germany and Eastern Europe. In late 1940, he made his way to Marseille after a narrow escape when his unit was overrun by the Germans in the Ardennes in May 1940. In Marseille, he became rabbi of all those who had been able to flee German-occupied France into the south. He obtained documents for tens of thousands of French and European Jews who had been interred by the Vichy government in detention and concentration camps in Gurs-les-Mythes and Saint-Crepin. Rabbi Langer was chaplain for the 10 Corps of the French Army, serving Jews and non-Jews, and received a special commendation from the French government. In April 1949, he was installed as Rabbi of Orach Chaim. The New York Times states in 1961 that Rabbi Simon Langer made extraordinary contributions to help Jews and non-Jews in World War II, and was credited in saving many French children from the Nazis. He was honored by the French government with the French Legion of Honor, La Légion d'honneur, for his role in the resistance to Nazism. Rabbi Langer was the first rabbi who set up kosher kitchens in cruise ships, including the Normandie and the Île-de-France, enabling Jews to have kosher food.
More recently, under the leadership of Boris Gorlin, president from 1949 to 1978, the congregation preserved its character of warmth and strength by opening its doors to the community. Under his leadership, an active Chevra Kadisha was formed, one of the first synagogues to have its own Chevra Kadisha. He also helped to form the Men's Club, the Parents Association, and Sisterhood.
I want to tell you how we got to Orach Chaim. And it's all God's work, actually. God did this to me. I was a librarian in Ramaz, and I loved working there, but it was becoming a little difficult coming from Queens on the train or by car and having little kids at home. So I came home one day and I said to my husband, I think I'm going to look for another job in Queens. It's just getting too hard to work, to go to Ramaz. And God heard what I was saying, and the next thing we knew was that we had a phone call from a friend of ours, Martin Carton, who then called Danielle Asner and said, would your husband be interested in becoming the rabbi of Orach Chaim?
Interestingly enough, the first Shabbat I was here, which was at the end of June in 1988, at the Sudah Shlishit after I spoke, Mr. Boris Gorlin, Zichron Livracha, said to me, I look forward to hearing from you many times in the future. And that prophecy is what has brought us here for more than a quarter of a century to be part of this wonderful family, the Orach Chaim family. And the thing that you find once you're here is the modesty of the people in the shul. This is a congregation that doesn't do anything spectacularly. There are no plaques on the walls.
There are a few.
We recognize each and every and the variety. I must tell you about one gentleman who was with the shul for many years, Mr. Weintraub. Mr. Weintraub, who died at the age of 94. But he would come to shul for mincha every afternoon. And he would ask me the same question all the time. Rabbi Schmidtman, how many Jews are living in Jerusalem? And you understand he had that special affection for Jerusalem because he had marched into Jerusalem with Allenby, General Allenby in 1917. And suddenly, because they feeling that you could speak to Yiddish to these people, I couldn't speak Hungarian to Mr. Havrin. But other than that, we speak in Yiddish to those who speak only Yiddish, to those who are academics, and that's what makes this shul unique. Anyone who walks in here, whether he davens Ashkenaz or Sfard, we have an Ashkenaz siddur and a Sfard siddur for him. My motto is to people who come to shul, if you come once, you don't have to come all the time. But whenever you do come, you'll be very welcome.
It's an amazing place because there's beautiful davening, deep, inspirational Torah. It's an amazing, amazing place. You have the out-of-town feel where everyone knows who you are and everyone cares about you in an urbane, sophisticated environment like the Upper East Side. Orach Chaim really offers the best of all possible worlds. It's just a totally unique and amazing place.
When Debbie and I moved here from London 11 years ago, it was really important for us to find a community that we could feel comfortable in and where we'd really have a family away from our real family. So it was difficult at first, for sure, finding somewhere that we felt welcome. And then when we had children, when we had Mia and Ayala, we wanted to find somewhere where the kids could go to groups, or they wouldn't go to groups. They'd come into shul and sit with us, or they'd go to groups, whatever they chose to do. And the first day that we walked into Orach Chaim, we knew we'd found the right place for us. It's welcoming to newcomers, and that's what really got us involved in the shul in the first place.
We look forward to greeting you all soon, for Orach Chaim is the place to be. Come and join us.